mother of 4 in Florida was shot and killed through a door by a neighbor while her 9-year-old stood next to her, according to police.
My deputies happened to respond to basically a trespassing call. And as they were on their way, they learned about an individual, or there was shots that were fired at the time. This has basically been a neighborhood feud over time. I've got reports that these things they've called one side or the other. Either the mother, Ms. Owens, is called, or a shooter is called, complaining about the children.
According to police, Ajike Owens went to her neighbor's home after the neighbor threw a pair of skates at her kids, ordering them to leave the area.
I wish our shooter would have called us instead of taking actions into her own hands. I wish Mrs. Owens would have called us, in hopes we could have never got to the point in which we are here today.
In an interview with MSNBC, attorney Ben Crump, who's representing the Owens family, called a stand-your-ground defense in a case like this asinine.
It is heartbreaking on every level, and the fact that they have not arrested this killer is appalling.
Some onlookers have compared this shooting in Florida to the shooting of Ralph Yarl in Kansas City, another incident involving a shooter firing through their door in a stand-your-ground state.
Most states don't have the stand-your-ground law. And what a lot of people don't understand is that law has specific instructions for us in law enforcement. And any time that we think or perceive or believe that that may come into play, we cannot make an arrest.
Broadly, stand your ground removes the duty to retreat before responding with deadly force in self-defense. It also gives any law-abiding citizen the right to defend themselves anywhere they are legally permitted to be.
It's all about necessity. Self-defense is a principle of necessity.
But Texas Tech law professor Jeffrey Korn calls stand your ground one of the most misunderstood laws in the country.
It is so widely misunderstood as a license to use deadly force whenever you feel threatened. And that's not what the law does, because you only get to stand your ground after you make a reasonable judgment that your life or somebody else's life is in imminent danger.
Korn also says the law's presence often gives citizens the confidence to shoot, even if the law doesn't actually back them up.
Of course. How can it not? They were misinformed, poorly educated, and they're looking at just the title of the law suggests, if I'm armed and I feel threatened, I can use my weapon.
There are 30 states across the country with some form of a stand-your-ground law on the books. According to a 2022 study, the law is associated with an 8% increase in both firearm and overall homicides. Now, civil rights attorney Ben Crump and this family allege there's a racial component to this case and that the shooter here was hurling racial slurs at these kids before the shooting took place. That said, authorities have not identified the shooter in this case or made any arrests and say that their hands are tied until the investigation is complete.